Marilyn, I got to meet you several times at some events. Like it was just a hit or miss, hey, how you doing? And we never really had the interaction. Never sat down, had the conversation at that moment. It wasn't until sometime late last year, I think we actually got on a Zoom call and we spoke for about 20, 30 minutes. And then he jumped on another little thing I had towards Christmas. And, so you kept showing up and finally I got you to come on the podcast. We found time for this. You're doing some incredible things, and I feel like you need to be on here to share your journey, why you're doing what you're doing, and what got you to where you are, right? So, would you mind just starting with, who's Marilyn today? Like what do you focus on? What are you most passionate about? And then I would love to go back in time for you to share how you got to where you are.
Okay, so I this year is 40 years that I am a nurse.
Wow.
So when people ask me who you are, I always say nursing is not something you do, it's actually who you are, right? So I can't just clock out and stop being a nurse when I'm not at work. I do it all the time. I started when I was 17 is when I graduated with a nursing license. And you've heard me say this before, but I say too young to vote, but old enough to save a life.
Mm.
Right? So I started very young, being exposed to people, their illnesses, recovery, and always feeling that we're not just a diagnosis, right? My patients weren't just a diagnosis. There was more to healing than medications to heal a symptom, right? So there's so much more pieces to the puzzle of why someone is ill. And that quest for trying to understand that is what led me to become a holistic nurse, right? So a holistic nurse looks at every aspect: body, mind, spirit, nutrition, activity, every single aspect of a human life to be able to heal that life, right? And so today I am a holistic nurse who right now I am sitting in my office of the Gathering Haven, which is something that just happened in the last year, that we've got our office. Julia Gandhi and myself were business partners. Um, and basically, it's because we know that there are so many people searching for alternate ways of healing, not just a pill, not just a doctor's visit, not just a test result, but are looking for to be able to heal those other parts of themselves, right? So we are in the field of, and we know a lot of people who do that kind of work. So right now, outside of this door, there's a hypnotherapist, a medical intuitive, Arvita, yogis, well, you name it, they're out there, out right outside this door today, right? Because we're having a little event here at the Gathering Haven. And those are the people that can heal those other parts of yourself,
Mm.
right? So we are like, and Julia says it's like an Angie's list for healers.
Okay, that's cool. I like that. So let me just ask you this before we go in other areas. First of all, how long did it take for you to become a holistic nurse? Like from the other, from the medical side, like what was that shift?
So that the shift happened because of my daughter, right? And you heard the story. I had a little girl in 2007, and 7 months, um, when she was 7 months old, she was diagnosed with a rare leukemia, right? So with this rare leukemia, traditional chemotherapeutic agents were not going to help it. There was no cure for it. The only cure that was out there was a stem cell transplant for her. Um, and so within that journey of her cancer and of trying to figure out what I needed to do to keep her healthy throughout that journey, I learned a lot of other things, right? And so holism began in an observation in Children's Hospital of Philadelphia as I was surrounded by children and babies with diagnosis, that they didn't even have an opportunity to, like we say sometimes with diseases, we've done this to ourselves, right? Because of bad habits or things like that. These children never did that to themselves. So we've got all this cancer, right? That I never even knew as a nurse existed. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh my God, these are children, these are babies. Meaning that when we're talking about the progression of disease, right? So now I'm looking at it in a different way. What could have been done before her birth, right? Because she was only 7 months old. What could I have done along the way? Is there anything that I can do? How do I prevent this from happening to my other children, to myself, to the rest of my family? So I started looking at things in a different way. And so I went back to get my bachelor's degree initially when I was pregnant with her, right? So in the school that I attended, there was a program for holistic nursing. So I studied holistic nursing after her passing. I went back to school. I was pregnant with her and I had to stop school. And when I went back, I did it for her. I did it for a different reason now, right? And I truly paid attention to those thoughts out there on what can we do preventively to prevent it before it gets here, right? Because I think that's the most important piece. Identify the things in your life that can lead you to illness, and let's do something about it before it hits you, right? And if it is here, what can we do to reverse it? What can we do to heal ourselves? So that is what actually led to me really paying attention and saying, I really have to take this to another level.
Yeah, and so with that being said, you made the shift and now you're doing holistic, um, nursing. And, I like to talk a little bit more about that because I know some people in that area too, not so much the nurse part, right? That's a little new for me.
Mhm.
So like you just mentioned a whole bunch of people outside that door right now, right? Because you have an event. So if I was to walk in and say, Marilyn, I need help with whatever, right? So you're going to diagnose me with whatever, I say the symptoms are, and I don't know what you do with vitals. I have no idea. Like, I don't know what that is, right? And you can share whatever that is. But I'm curious, how do you go, like, you should go see Reiki. I don't know. Is Reiki part of that? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
or
actually a Reiki master. I'm
is
actually
there,
a Reiki master,
right.
and
So
of
you
course,
just,
it's part of
you
that.
got levels of that all over the place here.
All o
And
but aromatherapy, there's so many different tools. This is it, there's tools in the
yeah.
toolbox, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That help a person to heal, depending on what it is actually that's causing this this, um, this disruption in your body. There's so many different things. Now, as a nurse, I can't diagnose. I can't diagnose you with a disease. What I can look at is the whole person. So I call myself an advisor, a wellness advisor. I take a look at everything that's going on with you. I talk to about your lifestyle, about the things that you eat, about what a typical day looks like for you, right? And we see what are you now being treated for with a doctor, right? So we look for opportunities to make tweaks but still be you. Because I know that a lot of times when we go to a doctor, they tell you, well, you got to stop this and you got to stop that. In other words, they're telling you to stop being you.
Mm.
And I went through this when my mom was diagnosed with diabetes. Right? And diabetes had not run in our family before my mom. But stress and going through the death of my daughter and a lot of other things led this to now come out in her. And so all the things that they were telling her that she couldn't eat and she couldn't do meant she had to stop being her. And I was like, that's it's not going to work. This is why these things don't work, right? Because they're a typical diet for a typical population and it doesn't work for everybody, right? So let me take a look at you. Let me take a look at what's normal for you and what tweaks can we make to allow you to still be you, but still move the needle on that health meter. And she was able to get herself off of insulin. She was able to reduce so many medications, lose weight, was vibrant and healthy up until, unfortunately, she had a devastating stroke in 2020. But she did a remarkable job at reversing so many things and still being her. And that's what's important. And I'd like to give that to others. So when I take a look at somebody who comes to see Marilyn Morales, that's what we're talking about. Who are you? How can we continue to allow you to be you, but a healthier version of you?
So what determines you to say, "Hey, go see this person versus this other person because of the symptoms or whatever I might have," right?
The tools of the toolbox. What speaks to you, right? So one of the pieces of my story as a nurse, and I said 40 years now, right? So in one of those episodes of nursing, I was a public health nurse in New York City, and I was present when the World Trade Center was hit in 9/11. Right there, firsthand account on the ground, helping to triage people coming from the building, subsequently going to ground zero to help displaced people who couldn't get home, setting up shelters, dealing with the aftermath, um, in that. And unfortunately, I then suffered from PTSD, and I didn't even recognize it as PTSD. Right? But I had all the classic symptoms of it, the insomnia, the inability to eat, inability to quiet the mind, pain, inflammation, all kinds of things that was happening to me. And it wasn't until someone said to me, "You need to go see somebody." Because one of my bigger symptoms that was emerging was paranoia, right? I was becoming paranoid about the government.
Mm.
I kept thinking, they knew. We all know, right? That there was a lot more to the story than we know. But it became an obsession of mine. And they were like, "This is you need to go see somebody." And when I went to talk to a doctor about what I was experiencing, he was like, "You're suffering from a classic case of PTSD." Right? Because the images of what I experienced on that day were constant in my dreams. I kept dreaming it over and over and over again, so it would never leave me, and it was now manifesting in physical illness. Migraines. I had migraines, debilitating migraines all the time. So I was becoming very physically ill as a result of that, right? So what spoke to me when I realized that that's what was happening to me and that I didn't wanna take a pill because I felt the pill was a Band-Aid, and this is coming from a nurse, right? That I felt that medicine has its place, but we also have to be able to do more than that because that's not going to take everything away. So, what else am I going to be able to work on to heal, to become the Marilyn Morales that existed on September 10th versus the one that emerged after September 11th? So, I knew that for me, scents are very important, right? So, aromatherapy became a thing for me for my healing. I tell people all the time, it's like when you go into a bakery and you smell all the good smells. Doesn't that transform you? If you're in a bad mood and you go into a bakery, you smell chocolate chip cookies, which happen to be one of my favorites, it transforms my mood. That's aromatherapy, right? Is finding the scent that speaks to you so that when you start having that symptom, when I start feeling anxious, I can pull that tool out and I carry essential oils in my bag all the time. I'll pull the one that I feel is gonna help me get myself realigned and centered, and it does, and my mood instantly transforms. I diffuse in the car, I diffuse in my office, I diffuse at work. I developed a program for my patients, with dementia in order to ease some of their anxiety and their stress and their pain through aromatherapy because it acts on the brain. So, when I talk to you, I say, "What do you like to do? What have you identified in your life that can help you go from a level 10 to bring you down to maybe a level 5?" And usually people can say, "Yeah, well, music. Music is a therapy, right? I listen to music, or I do scents, or I go for a walk, or, I meditate," whatever it is that you find yourself. And some people didn't even know that they meditate, right? They do different things and they don't realize that that's a form of meditation. Prayer is a form of meditation, right? So they'll say, "These are the different things that I do that help me." And so we start there. And then I introduce you to different things. There may be things that you never knew could work for you because you've never been exposed to them. Trial and error. Here's a tool, try it.
And about how long do you can work with the one tool?
Well, you're going to know pretty quickly. I always say a habit is what? 28, 30 days.
Yeah, that's what they say, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they say. But I find it to be true. You have to give it some time. For me, I know pretty quickly. Within 2 weeks, I know if something's going to work for me or not. I know. And I think most people know this is working for me or not. And because there's so many tools in the toolbox, right? You don't have to just rely on one. And if this one thing that you're trying is not working, then hey, let's pivot. Let's try something else. Something that's easier for you. Because if something takes too long, you're going to lose interest, right? But if you start to see some improvements within those first 2 weeks, you're going to keep going because you're going to see that it's already working on you.
Hmm. Do the, do your patients tend to see it themselves, or maybe, like, you or somebody that's a relative might notice the difference quicker, that something's working?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Usually they'll tell me, "Listen, that didn't work, but
Mhm.
but this did." Right? So that's why I like to build with what you have already recognized works for you, right? But you may not do it on a daily basis, right? So when it came to scents, I knew that smelling things immediately worked for me. I knew that, right? So by knowing that and making it a daily routine, right? I know this works, but let me make it a part of my routine every day. Then I knew I was building something that was going to keep me healthy all the time, right? And so I started introducing it into my work environments too. Very high stress environments where nurses work, right? You're dealing with patients, and patients, when people are sick, it brings out the worst in you,
Mm.
right? So we're dealing with people who are not feeling well, who are not their best selves, and their families who are not their best selves because they're worried about their loved one, right? So that's why you have people coming at nurses and arguing with them and attacking them and all kinds of things that happen in our environment, right? So we deal with the worst of the worst when it comes to that. So when we start introducing things, small little changes, families are usually the ones that notice it first, right?
Yeah.
And the patients will start to say, "I started to feel better." Um, that's why I love using tools on my patients with dementia, because they really, then you know that it's actually something that's working versus that they're thinking about it too much.
Okay.
So when I see that it's working for them and that this scent or that this touch or that music therapy is huge in in that population, right? That it actually transforms their mood and that we can use it to take care of them on a daily basis to get them to cooperate and to not feel so anxious and scared. And you see them transforming, then you know it actually works.
Because they really don't know. Am I right? Yeah.
Right. No, they can't think it through.
Mhm.
We tend to think things to death, right?
Mhm.
We think and think and think and think. While they're just being.
Hmm. It's interesting.
Very.
Yeah. It's almost like a test subject, and I hate to say it that way, but
I know, but that's, and I used it because and everything that I was doing was for their benefit, right?
yeah,
Because
of
their
course.
anxiety, their insomnia is huge in, patients with dementia and people with dementia. They've got their sometimes clocks reversed, they call it, right? Or there's something called sundowning where they start to get more anxious, more agitated or pace or in the evening time, right? So doing things once we identify this is the time of day where you can see that they're more stressed. What can we do in the environment versus give them a pill to sedate them, right? What can we do to get them so that their body realizes and recognizes it's time to start relaxing versus it's time to get revved up and started?
Mhm.
So let's make small changes in the environment. Aromatherapy is great for that. We do it with our children, right? They sell all these soaps that have lavender in it, right? That have all these pleasant smells. And we start when your children are small and you develop a routine to get them to go to bed, right? It's time to take a bath, and you put on the lotion, then you put on the pajamas, right?
Right.
We're setting a stage for them. And so eventually the child learns that when we do this, this is what comes next. And their bodies will automatically start to respond to that. And they will become sleepy and they will become tired because they've received the signals of it's time to go to bed.
Mhm.
So now we're
That
doing the very same thing in that population.
Right. I'm s so when I was a teenager, I worked at a old folks home, Mennonite home, right? And, they put me in the dementia unit eventually, and basically, I was serving food from the kitchen, right? So, I would just have to go down there, and because they were in a different unit, right? So, I had to take the food that they get and serve it there with them. Um, And so I got to see things. I got to see how dementia people, are, right? And obviously, they didn't do anything like they're just trying to contain them if they get all, fired up and all that kind of stuff, meds or whatever, you know? So I'm just curious because you got me thinking now, right? Have you ever been able to go into something like that, like a community or whatever, where you can probably do, somebody could play music or something and change the atmosphere?
Yeah, the majority of my career was spent in assisted living, nursing home, and geriatrics. So, as the director of nurses, I was allowed to develop programs and implement them and teach the staff. I actually put my nurses through Reiki training
Mm,
so that they could learn to use that on our residents that lived there to help them with pain, with stress, and with anxiety. So we did that. The aromatherapy program, I developed the program, I identified the oils, I taught the staff. So just like you, right? A staff member, we're going to have diffusers strategically placed in different areas. And in the kitchen, in the dining room, we were diffusing certain scents that would trigger hunger, right? So that, and in the morning, so that it would trigger people to wake up. So the citrus smells that wake people up, we would diffuse that in the morning. And then when it came time for evening time, they would diffuse things that would get them ready for bed. So it was a
like
whole.
your lavender, right?
Yeah, lavender, lavender.
Yeah.
I actually used it though. I have a funny story with that. When I started doing it, I started in the assisted living portion, and I put a diffuser in the nurse's office because the residents would come, and these are not ones with dementia. These are just the regular population that were there, but they would have to come to this medication room to get their medications, and they would fight. They would fight with each other, right? Because I got here first and I've been waiting too long. And so they'd be fighting with the nurses who were trying to give them the medicine. And it was just chaos in the morning, lines reaching down the hall. Everybody was stressed out. So I decided I'm going to buy a diffuser. I'm going to do some oils. And so I did lavender and peppermint. One relaxes you, but the peppermint wakes you up so you can stay focused, right? So they balanced one another. And I started diffusing it, but I didn't tell anybody what I was doing or what I was putting in the diffuser, right? I just said, I'm putting it on just so that it smells good in here. All of a sudden, after a couple of days of me doing the same thing day in, day out, right? You'd see less. And the additional benefit of those same oils are that they're antibacterial and antiviral. So they clean the air, right? So when you have a lot of people that are in together, you want something like that because it cleans the air on top of it. So residents weren't fighting as much. They would just calmly sit there and wait for their medicines. But the bigger thing came because my nurses didn't know what I was putting in there, that I went away for a week, right? I went away on vacation and took my oils with me. When I came back, they were like, "What the heck are you putting in there?" Because while you were gone, we could feel the difference. Their anxiety increased. They started to see the change in them. They didn't never knew that they were also being affected by the oils that I was diffusing until it was gone. And then they noticed the difference in themselves. And they were like, "Don't ever do that again. Leave them right here and teach us." And I was like, "That is the best case study I've ever done because it worked on my employees." And that's what I was looking for.
That's great. Do they still use it today? Do you know?
I've now switched companies, but up until the time that I left, yes, they
Uh,
were using it on all the different buildings that I supervised. I oversaw, I was a regional nurse at the end with that organization. So
yeah.
I oversaw like 10 communities. So in a lot of them, they were using it. I shared
That's
the
cool.
story of how it helped me, how it helped my nurses, how it helped my patients. And, sometimes we got to think outside the box.
Yeah. Do you think it's difficult to get in those communities and get this kind of holistic stuff in there?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Western medicine, they look at that as hokey pokey, like
Mhm.
that kind of thing. So I was very happy that my chief nursing officer, so my boss, was open to the idea. When I first started talking to her about, I hate using these medicines on my patients. I really wish that I could. Those words, I wish that I could do this. And she was like, so go ahead. And she said to me, she turned around, she goes, "And you know what else I want you to do?" She goes, "I want you to develop an entire program and I want you to present it to all the other directors of nurses at our next meeting.
Mm.
So get it together and get it done." And I said yes, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. I had 0 idea. And I was just like, "God, you're gonna have to help me. You put this idea in my head, right? You
Right.
taught me this. You're gonna have to I had to have faith that it was gonna turn out. And let me tell you, that yes, and we all talk about this, right? Saying yes. Just gotta say yes, and then it'll figure it out itself out. So I said yes to this. So every time that I went out to either a meeting, an event or something, I kept meeting nurses who were practicing holistic on the side. I met a certified aromatherapist, and I was like, because I was looking as I was developing this program to present, I wanted to present it with continuing education credits for nurses so that they could get additional things out of it, right? So I wanted other people besides myself. I wanted experts in these different things that I was thinking of. So I wanted somebody who knew about meditation, somebody who knew about essential oils. Um, it was meditation, essential oils, Reiki. So all these different things, and I wanted to have them trial it. So it was going to be a whole day presentation where the participants could also participate in this. I met a nurse who was a certified aromatherapist. I went somewhere else. I met two twin nurses who also had a meditation practice. I then met another one who was a Reiki master. So all of a sudden, I built a team just by going. I was like, oh my God, God is so good. He is just introducing me to the team. And so I got them all together. We developed a program, and it was a total hit. It was a hit.
That's awesome. So do you ever see this now where you are currently too? Do you have something like that?
This is why the Gathering Haven exists.
Yeah. Okay.
Was that same idea that when I did that, those practitioners, we were sitting around a table as we were planning, and they were like, We should really take this on the road."
Mm.
And this was back, I can't tell you, maybe 2012? 2012. It was a long time ago. And they said, "You should really take this on the road, and we'll all come with you," right?
Mm.
Teaching nurses how to look at their patients differently, because my entire audience was nurses, directors of nurses. And so they were able to experience these things and how it felt for them. Imagine doing this for your patients. Do it for you and do it for them. And so I had an audience completely of directors of nurses, and everybody loved it. Everybody took notes. Everybody, just went out and took it to their communities and started practicing it. So I was like, you know what? Doing this and taking it on the road and bringing experts with me, it's exactly what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. So now here we are, how many years later, right? My son's what, 15? So this is maybe a decade later when I run into Julia Gandhi as we were writing our books, right? Through Emilia Roman and Daniela Roman through them. Um, we had been in the same circles. She had come into my communities that I oversaw, and I never met her. Yet we kept missing each other in all these places until then. Sat next to each other during one of Emilio's events and started talking to each other and had the same belief. And I was like, I've had this dream, this idea. And at that time, I was starting my nonprofit. I was trying to figure out how I was going to share my daughter's journey and how I was going to change the world and start saving some lives. So my focus had changed to something else at that time, but never letting go of the dream of the Gathering Haven, of bringing practitioners together with people that are seeking wellness and transforming health. And here we are,
Mm. Yeah.
living the dream.
Right. And so you just shared how long ago that was and how, it took so long to get to where it is today to even start, right?
To even
Um,
start. Yeah, because life happens, right? Life be lifing, as they say.
yeah. So let's just have a quick discussion on that, like the time, right? So, I mean, how do you feel? Would you have, if you started before you met her, do you think you would be where you are? Would you continue? I mean, anything's possible, right? But it's just like,
Yeah, anything is possible. So, and you're absolutely right with that. And what led me to holism is because of my daughter, and because I knew, and the story goes, when I was pregnant with Isabella, I was 38 years old, right? So that's considered an advanced maternal age, an older mom, right? And when that happens, they send you to these genetic specialists just to make sure all is well. So I went to that appointment while I was pregnant with her. And the one thing they told me that I triggered for, my husband and I, was cancer.
mm,
And That's the only thing you trigger for. And I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that information? Right? I'm not going to terminate my pregnancy based on what you're telling me is a trigger. I have two other children that were older than her. And I said, and they're perfectly fine. So I said, thank you very much. And I left, not knowing that the child I was carrying was going to have cancer 7 months later. The irony of that, right? So now, after the journey of Isabella, after her loss, and I am now 42 years old and pregnant with my youngest, Lorenzo. Again, I'm older. They send me right back to genetic specialists, and I'm in front of the same exact team.
Mm.
And so at that point, I say to them, you know what? I didn't listen to you then. I'm listening now. What was I supposed to do with that information? Instead of just closing myself off, share with me, what should I have done different? And they were like, you have to live different, right? So, what that means for you and for your children and for your descendants, because you carry this gene that can switch to cancer at any moment, that you have to eat different. You can't be eating processed foods. It has to be whole as much as possible, right? You have to eliminate chemicals out of your home. This is what led me to essential oils, okay? That chemicals that are cancer causing, you can't have them because in a regular person, it's not going to turn to cancer. In you, it will, right? So, how you live, how you sleep, how your doctors treat you moving forward means that you go through screenings earlier than other people would. So, we have to be more vigilant about you, your children, and your husband because you never know when that's going to pop up. Okay. So I took the chemicals out of my home and started saying, how am I going to clean, right? You got to clean. So I'm starting to look for more natural things in order to clean that are antibacterial, antiviral, clean the air, all those things, right? And you know where it led me right back to? Florence Nightingale. Florence Nightingale, who is the founder of nursing, right? The first nurse. That's exactly what she used to do on when she was treating patients and she was in the war. She was cleaning with lavender, she was opening windows, fresh air, doing all the holistic things.
Mm.
It took me right back to the beginning. And I was like, this is it. This is the key. Back to basics.
Interesting. I just think of how much we lost all that. How long ago was that when she started? Do you know?
When who started?
The nurse you just mentioned.
Oh, Florence Nightingale. I should know that.
A long time ago, right? Like,
Oh
yeah, yeah.
my God. Yes. No, I think we should look that up right now. And I'm assuming to say I don't remember the year that but she is the one that developed medicine. We nurses take the Nightingale oath when we become nurses.
Okay.
19th century.
Okay.
19th century.
Yeah,
And
a long
she's the
time ago.
mother of nursing. She was in the Crimean War. She was the one who developed what we now call nursing.
Interesting. So that's a long period of time for us. This sounds like she started this, right? And then we lost track of it.
And we lost it. And I tell you, my grandmother used to tell me this all the time, right? So I was very blessed to be able to be in the same home with my grandmother. And because I started nursing so young, I was 15. And when I actually started going into this program in high school, I was one of the youngest in the program. And so I was very science minded. And my grandmother comes from Puerto Rico, and they didn't believe in medications, right? They believed in getting the herbs from the earth and making them into teas and healing whatever it was that was wrong with you. So an herbologist kind of thing, herbology. So she would take whatever's wrong with you. She would then pick whatever plant, make that a tea, and then serve it to you as medication. That was medication. So she would tell me, oh, stop thinking about that's not going to make you any better. I remember she herself healed me of a pneumonia. I was in nursing school and taking antibiotics that were not helping me. And I had pneumonia and I kept going to school. And I would take Tylenol before just to keep my fever down. And I was not getting better. And she told me, throw those pills away and drink what I'm giving you. And she would take these leaves out of the window and she'd make a big pot of tea. And she goes, you got to drink this every couple of hours. And I did that for like 24 hours and broke the sweat. And by the next day, I saw a huge improvement. And I stopped taking the antibiotics and started taking what she gave me and healed. But I would fight her all the time. I was like, "Oh my god, you're just talking about olden days, right? Now we got medicine, now we got different things." And she would fight with me like, "You're losing sight of what's important. That God gives us everything that we need right here on the earth.
Mhm.
You just gotta identify it, know how to transform that, and feed your body." And I didn't I didn't pay attention. Um, and it wasn't and when my journey with, my daughter, I was like, "Oh my god, my grandmother was so right." She was so right. She was trying to tell me, and I didn't listen. But now I'm listening.
Mhm. Yeah, it a like a wake up call.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a but it got you to a place where you're helping so many more people, right? Um, and I would love for you just I know you have everything with the Izzy's legacy and his stuff, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that. But you know, we spoke a few times, and like this has been incredible. Like just your journey right there, just sharing your background as a nurse, and we dove in depth there just to get you from, you know, to where you are now to being in the holistic nursing field, right? And it's and there's so many more questions I have for you, right? Because you're going from medical to holistic, and you're like, there's a gap there with people believing, not believing, and all that kind of stuff, So there's so much we could touch on all that. Um, but I would love for you to share a little bit about Izzy's legacy, and if you want to share how people can reach and connect with you about that, and even with your business you have, and how people can get help from you there. Um, feel free to please share all that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for asking about that. So, yeah, the nonprofit organization Izzy's Legacy is in honor of Isabella, my daughter. So, in that journey, as I shared, she was in need of a bone marrow transplant, a stem cell transplant. So, one of the things that we learned is the disparity that exists within this registry. So, the family was tested. None of us were a match for her to be able to give this life saving treatment that she needed, which happens to 70% of the people who are suffering from a blood cancer or disorder, right? They go to the family first. 70% of these patients can't find a match within their own family. So now they have to go onto this registry of heroes, as I call them, right? People who volunteer to donate their bone marrow stem cells to people in need. And it's very important that genetically you match. So people from similar backgrounds. So I'm Latino descent, right? So that the best possible match for my daughter was gonna be somebody of Latin origins, right? And so once I was told that none of us were a match and that we had to search on this registry, I was also told that I was gonna have a hard time because we didn't have a presence on that registry, right? So why is that, right? Um, Fortunately, she did find her match, and it turned out to be a Caucasian man who had a little bit of diversity within him. His paternal grandmother was Mexican, but everything else was European. Everything else was that. So this little bit allowed this man to match my daughter at a greater level than her own parents. Imagine that, right? So having a little bit of diversity. And I think that's the important piece of this story is how connected we actually are as humans. As different as we feel we may be one to the other, at a cellular level, this man matched her closer than any family member possible. Who does
Mm.
that but God? Who does that but God? Right? So once I learned that, I said, no matter what happened with my daughter, I said I was going to have to continue to share this information because if I didn't know it as a medical professional, nobody knows this information, right? And so, how do I encourage people to join that registry? So, we had drives looking for her match, and we continue to have drives for the other children that I saw surrounding me that also needed matches, right? So, we did it in a smaller scale, but it wasn't until I believe it was 2021 where my daughter, who was 9 years old when this happened, is now a grown woman and now working for that same organization that helps you find your match, right? Full circle moment, for my oldest daughter, Gabrielle. And she comes home one day, and I could tell something was wrong. And I was like, "What's going on? What happened at work today?" And she was like, "Well, I'm doing this drive. I'm trying to attract attention for this little girl who's in need of a transplant, and I'm having a hard time." And so she had this little girl and a set of twins who had cancer, and they were Caucasian. This little girl was Latina, right? So thousands of people came out for these two other girls. 20 people showed up for this Latin girl. And so her mother was crying to my daughter saying, "How come my child does not matter? Why does my child not matter? Why does nobody care about mine?" And my daughter couldn't answer. She didn't have an answer for her. And so, because for my daughter, it's very personal because she went through it with her sister. She's like, "I don't know what to do." She goes, "I've called we've been on the papers, we've been in the news. Like, what else is going to make people come out?" And at that point, I said, "I'm mad because I know what that mother's going through. Now I'm not sad, I'm mad." I was like, "I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something because if I don't do something different, we'll never have a different outcome." So at this point, you have to stop standing on the sidelines and actually do something. And as I was searching for that thing to do, I saw Emily and Daniela on a podcast just like yours, yeah, that my friend had, and they were talking about sharing your story and the impact that you can have in sharing your story. And I know in my journey, reading books has always been a vehicle of mine to heal, to find healing. And I said, "That's it. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And in this book, I'm just going to get it out there to as many hands as possible, share my story, share how I was able to heal myself from PTSD. And then again, my personal 9/11, as I call it, Isabella's journey and healing after her passing. So healing from grief and PTSD, what I used, but also sharing that very important piece. So inside the book, I put a code that led you right to the registry where you could join. If you're between the ages of 18 and 35, you can join this registry from the comfort of your home. You don't even have to go anywhere, right? Joining is simple as, getting on there, ordering your kit. It comes to your house. It's a simple swab of the cheek, 10 seconds on each side. You put it back in an envelope. You send it back, postage paid. No money out of your pocket. And boom, you're there. You're on this registry of heroes. But when you're called upon, right, that's when you say your yes. This is your opportunity to do something. If you've never done anything else that you think is impactful or can change the world, that yes, I will donate. That's it. That's it. And today, it's no longer, people remember stem cell and bone marrow donations as surgery. They used to have to go into the hip bone. So people think of bone marrow and they go, "No, that sounds painful." Well, it's not. It's like giving blood today, right? It's no surgery, no anesthesia. It's like giving blood 90% of the time. That's how the donation occurs. Is you're hooked up to a machine, they take out the cells that they need, they give you the rest back. You go home and live your life, and you've just saved a life.
Well, I'm glad you shared that because I thought it was still complicated as as I remember hearing probably a long time ago.
A
Yeah.
lot of people say that, they're like, "Oh, I thought," no, 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 science has evolved, thank God.
Yeah.
So
About it.
input of a couple of hours of your time, yet it means the world to that person, to that mother, to that family.
Mhm. And how do they register? Is there a website?
So yeah,
Emery?
let's right on my website,
Yeah.
izzy'slegacyinc.org. You go right on to that website. There is a button there where it says if you want to make a donation, if you want to join the registry, it says registry.
Mhm.
Click on it, you put in your information, and the kit gets mailed to your house.
That's
Easy
cool.
as pie.
That's cool.
And anybody that wants to, and we also help families on a cancer journey. I also want to mention that. So there's a financial aspect to Izzy's Legacy. We raise funds and we help families. So if you're in financial need, there are so many expenses besides just medications that families run into when you're diagnosed with cancer. So we
Mhm.
help with that as well.
Awesome. Awesome. And how do people connect with you for the holistic nursing?
Yeah, so that the Gathering Haven. Listen, the easiest way
Okay.
to get a hold of me is on Facebook, Marilyn Morales. Look me up. Send me a message. But thegatheringhaven.com. is where you learn about Julia, Gandhi, myself, and all these great practitioners that are working with us. Um, oh, look at your dog.
Yeah, she must get in on this.
Yeah, so that it get connected with us and, become a part of our family.
Awesome. Thank you. So I have one question I ask everybody at the end.
Yeah.
What are 3 key things you've learned and used along your journey?
3 things
Mm.
is, wow, good question, is to trust in God, number 1, always trust and say yes, even though you don't know the answers.
Mm.
Know that you have everything that you need right here inside of yourself. All the answers are right here inside of you, and be kind to others, not just yourself.
Awesome. I love them. It's great. Yeah, I'm looking at my values over there. So kind is one of them, right? And so that's just something we all have to kind of carry on. Uh, the world would be a whole lot different if there's a lot more people that are kind.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's a good one. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your journey and everything you've dealt with nursing and Izzy's legacy. So I'm glad we were able to meet. I'm glad you came on and share with everybody else. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I welcome everybody down here to the Gathering Haven in Malta, New Jersey.
There you go. We'll be there.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you.
All right. Bye.